Welcome to At Work With, where I interview industry leaders to get real about their career journeys. No rehearsed answers, no corporate fluff, just honest conversations about the wins, the fails, and all the messy bits in between. Today, I'm joined by the brilliant Samir Patel, CEO of Comic Relief. I've had the deep privilege to be able to work alongside him and his brilliant team on the Amazon and Comic Relief partnership. Working and running part of this campaign has truly been one of the highlights of my career. And to top it off, Samir agreed to an interview bang in the middle of Red Nose Day 2025. Samir joined the charity in 2021. Growing up in a small Atlanta community, a few could have predicted that Samir would one day lead Britain's most beloved charities. His path to becoming CEO has been anything but conventional, a testament to what embracing the unexpected can lead to. Welcome, Samir Patel.
Right, amazing. Hi, Smith.
Hi.
Thank you for being here in person. So firstly, I was going to say thank you so much for coming. I honestly didn't think that you would say yes. Firstly, so soon to Red Nose Day. You know, I've been chasing you for about 2 years, right?
I do vaguely remember that, but
I
figured it was about time I
leave.
answered.
Yeah, it was pre-maternity leave, and then I'll come back to it later. And then I think at the party when you said, "Oh, you'll feature," I was like, I pinged Lisa and I pinged you. I was like, "Yeah, we're ready to go."
Yeah.
But I think just as we were speaking when you came in, what I'd love to start with, Samir, is about your experience growing up in the American South. As I said, I was there for, I think, a year, just under a year in the early 2000s. But could you paint us a picture of what that was like?
Yeah, so I grew up in a town called Marietta, which is outside of Atlanta. The way I tell people about my childhood is it's sort of like an 80s teen movie.
Yeah.
So it was football and cheerleaders and sports cars and keg parties and all of the things you see in those movies was pretty much my existence in the suburbs, just rows and rows of houses, mass suburbia. So I grew up there. My dad worked for Lockheed Engineering Company.
Yeah.
He, worked on airplanes. So they were based there in Marietta, and that's why he ended up there. He came to the U.S. In the late 60s from India, kind of classic immigrant story. I think he had $8 in his pocket.
Yeah.
Eventually built a life. So that's where I grew up in the South. We were, probably the only Indian family around at that time. And over time, we got to know a lot of people because back then when other people would come over from India, they would look in the phone book at Patel because it's such a common name. They would look up Shaw or Patel or something and they would randomly call up my dad because I was the only one in there. So he became well known and he would help a lot of people out. So we always had people staying with us. So I kind of grew up always sharing a bedroom with multiple people. And
my grandparents' stories, my granddad came in the 60s and it was the same, really. It was kind of that mass migration into the Western diaspora. But you talk about your experience, and I read a couple of articles where you've spoken about just being in school around that time and kind of college and stuff. How going through that experience, and I only saw a small amount of it because I was back in London then by 11, 12 years old. How did that shape your worldview and the values that you now implement in your personal and your professional life? It's a very different environment. I experienced it for a very short time, being the only Asian, being the only Muslim. I would really stand out in school. But obviously I was there for 6 months. How was that for you? Your whole education?
Yeah, well, I think it's one of those things where in the time you're not necessarily aware of everything. I mean, certainly like most people who grew up in a similar situation, you're called names, you're very aware, you're different, and all you want to do really is fit in. So I was probably a bit embarrassed of my Indian culture, of my parents, and just want to kind of fit in and be an all-American kid like everyone else.
Just to hide your clothes so they didn't smell of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember I remember those comments. I mean, and it's funny how much those things stay with you. I remember being at a friend's house and his dad walked in the room. It's like, why does it smell of onions in here? And I was thinking, oh, my mom was just cooking this huge batch of something. Like, I think it's me, and just not.
That completely.
So you're not really aware of those things, but certainly you hear those things. But I think it was when I left university, and because I grew up outside of Atlanta, I sort of thought I would go, and I went to University of Georgia in the same state. I thought I would get a job in Atlanta and, live near my parents, but I got a job and they put me on a project in Boston. And I went to Boston, and it's so funny because it sounds so naive now. I was so innocent, but I went to Boston and I just saw so much diversity with all of the different universities there and everything. And I also experienced being in a sort of bigger city where you can walk everywhere and there's museums and lots of culture around. And I was just hooked, and I kind of never looked back. Then I ended up moving to New York, which is, which I kind of loved. So yeah, I think at the time I was aware I was different and I just wanted to fit in. And it was only as I got older that I really started to appreciate the uniqueness of being different and kind of being yourself.
Yeah, I think that goes on well from one of the things you said in your previous interviews was about power of identity and how that shapes your choices and how you live your life and you run your business and your family. Was there a particular moment or experience from your youth, like you say, these things stay with you, that still influences the decisions that you make today? Is there really something that stands out?
I think some of it might be less about something I experienced and more about witnessing my parents and different things they've said to me. Some of it also in hindsight, but my case was certainly just a search for identity. Looking back, I was working in consulting, kind of digital internet sort of consulting, but I was always interested in filmmaking. And when I look back on the things I was doing, and I made some short films and I dabbled in that, when I look back at some of the things I made and I wrote, they're just so obvious searches for identity and grappling with different cultures and wanting to be a good son for your parents versus wanting to pursue your own path. And I struggled with all of those things to the point where I really had to kind of distance myself from my family a bit just so I could find my own way. And I always struggled with that. But it was actually, even though you have some of those pressures from your parents, it's a bit of a contradiction because sometimes my parents also gave me the exact advice I needed at the time in ways that really surprised me about, at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you and so forth. And also seeing how they grew up and what they sacrificed and thinking about, well, if I've been given this opportunity just to be here and grow up here and so forth, paradoxically, I almost owe it to them to be my own person and be what I can, even though that can be hard to accept for them and other things.
Conflicted.
Yeah.
Is that so? This is not my questions, but is that why you have a film degree and a business degree? Is this parents want you to do business, doctor?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Exactly right. So, it was already a compromise to get a business degree because that wasn't medicine, it wasn't law, it wasn't engineering.
Yeah. I was just going to say business is a little bit low on our pecking order.
Exactly.
Right?
So it was already a compromise that it wasn't, engineering or medicine, but business was my kind of path. And I think I didn't really have it instilled in me when I was young to think about what I wanted or what I was interested in. When I look back, I think I was actually quite interested in architecture. I used to constantly draw houses and floor plans. I went to a architecture class at night when I was in high school. Who does that? But I just never really thought about it. Again, sounds kind of strange and naive now. And I just thought, okay, business, it's a stable job. It's something I go pursue, and maybe it's not medicine, but my parents will approve of this. But actually in university, I was just really interested in film. I wanted, after graduating from university, I wanted to go do a summer film course at NYU. And my parents, of course, were like, are you crazy? We just helped you get this degree. And so instead I kind of dabbled. I took some night classes, I learned on my own. I eventually found a way to blend it in with my work. So whenever there was an opportunity to do video at work, I kind of raised my hand until that actually became my career. But yeah, that is why I have both of those parts of my background.
Yeah, I completely, as soon as I saw that, I was like, that's like, so I did engineering because when I told my mom I wanted to do journalism, she was like, you're my only child, you're going to ruin my life. Like, why would you do that? And then she was like, once you've done your degree and your master's and your MBA, then you can think about, and I was like, no one's going to go back into journalism after that. But yeah, so I thought that would be your answer. I was like, I definitely have to check. So you spoke about, obviously you moved from a small town in Atlanta, then you went to Boston, then you went to New York. How have you gone from Atlanta to East London? What has been that shift? From like zero diversity to only diversity now.
So that's kind of a timeless story. It was for my girlfriend, who's now my wife.
Yeah.
So we met in New York, and she is an architect, and
she had the night classes.
Yeah. No, that was before that.
Oh, okay, right.
So no, we met in New York much later. I met her a bit later in my life. So when I was in New York, so I lived in New York for about 10 years or something. And I met her there, and she was from London, and she was working there. Then she went back to London to get her master's in architecture. And I sort of thought, well, maybe we're just going to break up or whatever, but we kind of just kept going and did a long distance relationship almost accidentally. And so at that time, I was doing film production, corporate videos, short films, and I shot all over the world. So I was quite flexible where I was based. So I thought, well, I'll move over to London for 6 months and see what happens. And yeah, I'm still here today.
Yeah. Okay, fine. And then of course you joined Blue State post your, so you ran a film production company.
Yeah.
And why did that stop?
I
couldn't find anything online, so
that stopped for lots of complicated reasons. I think that I really wanted to become a feature filmmaker, but I was a stereotypical kind of tortured artist. I was really perfectionist about things. I put a lot of pressure on myself. And in terms of the film production business, that went quite well, shooting corporate videos and things like that. To this day, it was probably some of the most successful things I've done financially, but I just felt very tortured that this is not why I got into film. And I think the other thing was I moved to London and didn't have the same network of people around me. So I worked for myself. I basically get gigs. So I'm essentially a freelancer, but I didn't have this group of friends around me. And I'm living in a new city and was feeling quite isolated, beating myself up that I'm not finishing scripts or whatever. And so I knew someone who had worked at Blue State in the US and I was telling him that I was feeling so he said, oh, you should there's a Blue State London office. You should just talk to them. So I had a coffee and I thought, yeah, maybe I'll do some contract work with them, just something a bit different. And when I did that, I think the nice thing was I felt a bit more connected to the city because I'm commuting into the city. I'm working with a team again. I'm meeting new people. And it made me realize how sort of miserable I was doing the film. Even though the video was the thing I really wanted to do, it was actually making me quite an unhappy person because it was going down very secure route, but not a very artistic route. And I was struggling with that. And I didn't know how to make the artistic side happen. So I kind of went back into the consulting world by working with Blue State and didn't know how long that would be. And kind of just like I said about moving to London, this many years later, I'm still kind of doing that.
And I think when you ended at Blue State, you were the chief innovation strategist.
Yeah.
And I know in your previous things you talked about how you were on the consulting side. What was that? Was there like a pivotal moment or a shift that you said, okay, now I want to go and give my services or provide my services to the charity sector? That's a big move to make, like moving from a consulting and private background to then going into the third sector. We sit across the table from you guys. It's a completely different environment. What was it that made you then not just make a shift into the charity sector, but actually go as a head of a charity, a very, very popular charity in the UK?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. My career has always meandered and has never been very planned or intentional. So my goal wasn't to go back into consulting or the agency world when I joined Blue State. Like I said, it was a random coffee and I thought, why not try this? So Blue State was a values-driven agency, very sort of progressive. It made its name working on Barack Obama's campaigns in the US, and then built a full-service agency. And because it was values-driven, worked with a lot of nonprofits, worked with politics, with advocacy, with purpose-driven brands. So I worked at Blue State for 8 years, and I gained a lot of knowledge, both around digital mobilization, but also about nonprofits and fundraising. And I'd worked with a lot of nonprofits as a consultant, so really big international nonprofits. And so I knew that world. And after spending my kind of whole life sort of on the agency side, you jump from project to project, client to client, and that keeps it interesting. But there was certainly a part of me that was thinking it would be nice to kind of sit and see change through, not just be the instigator of change, because we would offer business strategy and brand strategy to our clients, but then we kind of step away. Sometimes we implement some of that, but ultimately we're there temporarily. So I was thinking about going somewhere to really kind of see change through and live through that. Knew I would learn a lot through that. So I saw the comic relief role, and obviously I'm very aware of the brand, and it's an amazing brand. And I also knew that it was going through a lot of change, and it just seemed like an interesting enough challenge But again, it wasn't a big life plan. I kind of saw the role and I decided to go for it. The other thing that was a bit crazy about that is it was right in COVID.
Yeah.
It was in lockdown. I was having a new baby. It was kind of the craziest thing to do at the time, but I just decided to go for it and got the job.
Well, I read your talk about baby. I read your reflections on. I've come to talk to you, so I'm sorry if you see me like liking posts from like years ago. I read the reflections about what it was like having a child in the pandemic and working and stuff. So I've saved those because I have an almost 2-year-old, so they completely resonate with me now. That's so interesting, and I love the fact that you just go for it and then see what happens.
Well, the funny thing is, I mean, I got the job offer in the hospital the day my daughter was being delivered.
Oh my God.
So it was really this
Too much
in the middle of lockdown. So when I joined Comic Relief, it was all remote. So I didn't meet anyone in person. The offices weren't open. All of that kind of stuff. So that was a really interesting experience.
Yeah.
Coming in and leading an organization when you haven't even met anyone in person, and then also having a brand new child to look after at the same time. I think the first call I joined with Comic Relief, I had my daughter in a sling and I was kind of bouncing while I was talking on this video call.
Real leadership.
Yeah, introducing myself. It was a bit crazy at the time, but yeah.
Then I guess going on to Comic Relief and kind of the brand, I read in one of your articles where you spoke about now with your position as CEO in the charity sector in the UK, you said that, you look different to a lot of the peers that you work alongside. You dress differently, you speak differently. How is have you seen in the last couple of years, obviously you've been there now a few years now, your unique background, how has that influenced your leadership style at Comic Relief?
Yeah, it's interesting because I can only sort of be me. And I think part of what influences my leadership side is my background working in digital and creative agencies. That's one side of it, and working for places that had very strong kind of cultures and values. But part of it is my background as a strategist and my background in innovation. And so, I've had to learn a lot at Comic Relief because I haven't worked for a charity before. I haven't been a CEO of a charity before. So obviously there's a big learning curve. But I think the thing for me is I'm very focused on strategy. I'm very focused on what does this organization need to do? Where does it need to be? And how does that always drive everything that I do and we do? Ultimately it is a charity. So it is important. The work we do is important, and that's the most important thing. And so having that sense of direction and knowing that there's going to be challenges along the way, and we might take a couple steps forward, a couple steps back, we might go a bit sideways, but there always has to be that forward progress based on our strategy. And that kind of drives the bulk of how I kind of lead the organization. It's all about progress.
Yeah. I mean, you speak about, bringing the digital innovation into a brand like Comic Relief. And I know that we speak a lot, obviously on a professional level as well, about a 365 day, how do we go beyond Red Nose Day? How have you found that transition, obviously with Comic Relief just being the brand that it's been, to now be like, okay, no, we're not just Red Nose Day focused, we're all year round focused. And I know there was stuff in the news where, Comic Relief is not sending celebrities to Africa anymore, which I completely understand why we want to use more local filmmakers. So how difficult or challenging has that shift been? You come in net new from a corporate background, not worked in the charity sector. It's not like you worked your way up. Sounds hard.
Yeah, well, and I guess that's where my background working with charities was useful, because I had worked with organizations that were grappling with a lot of the same things. And a lot of this change has been, started at Comic Relief before my time. We had been changing how we tell stories. We've been changing how we fundraise. We've been trying to move towards an organization that's not so reliant on Red Nose Day. And so it's just continuing that work. And I think what's really hard there is you have a 40-year-old organization. This is our 40th anniversary right now, who has a long track record of doing this big campaign, Red Nose Day. And I think even when the people leave, that culture and that legacy is strong. And so trying to shift a mindset around how do we do this, but also how do we do things in a different way. So it's not just what you do. So we do more things throughout the year. We have a sport relief campaign in the summer. We have a winter fundraising appeal. We're doing everyday digital fundraising throughout the year. But it's not just what you do, it's how you do it. Because that actually means we're trying to do more throughout the year, but with less resource than we used to have, because Comic Relief used to be quite bigger. So that means we have to look at how we deliver things. We have to do things in a more agile and nimble way. We have to test things and, get evidence before scaling them up. So yeah, I think that's a constant evolution that sort of doesn't change. So a lot of what we talk about in the organization is that change is just continual evolution. It's not as if we change once and it's done. We have to constantly figure out how to work in a new way. We have to constantly look at our processes and things that might be remaining from 10 years ago that we still operate against, and figure out how we can shift those while we're also dealing with the day-to-day of delivering the important work that we need to do. So it's kind of similar to what I said before. It's always that forward progress. It's kind of finding ways to continually improve. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. And then if we move into just, I guess, running the charity, I read that since 2022, staff have said that their confidence in the executive leadership has almost, I think, doubled by 133%. That's really nice for you to hear, right? Since we started.
Yeah, that is nice.
Such a wonderful, your parents should be proud. Have you told your parents that?
Indian immigrant parents being proud is a whole other discussion. It's all relative.
Some data. Share them.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that does feel good, and I should say it was starting from a low point also, so there's still much more to go. But yeah, I think some of that is just stability. Comic Relief had been through a lot of change, before I had joined, and we're still going through change. But I think just providing stability, again, providing that sense that there is a strategy, we are going to keep moving forward on it. I think some of those things that offer stability to the organization are just really, really important.
Amazing. And so I think if we start move on to the partnership that we have with Amazon and Comic Relief, I'd be really interested to know, and this was pre my time on this campaign, because I think I was meant to be on this campaign, then I had a baby and I was away for 2 years. What was it that made Amazon such an attractive partner for you guys?
Yeah, well, it was sort of a unique moment and a unique opportunity where we were looking for a partner to help us sell the Red Notice. We had a relationship with Amazon through AWS, and so we had a partnership there. And we had a great relationship with AWS, and a big shout out to Joe, who worked with us because he was amazing. And he helped to make an introduction to another part of Amazon, your team, I think. And we kind of raised this issue that we're looking for a partner to help do this. So it started a bit more specifically about, can someone help us sell the noses, which Amazon agreed to do. And then from there, it sort of has grown and continues to grow into a fuller, richer partnership. And we're talking about what does that partnership mean moving forward. But it didn't start out of how lots of our partnerships start, which is, where are we trying to drive shared impact? And there was a little bit more, we need help with this, and Amazon stepped in. But we found Amazon to be a pretty amazing partner because a real willingness to bring a lot of Amazon's know-how to the partnership and to the charity. So yeah, it's just been a real kind of pleasant surprise and an amazing kind of working relationship so far.
I think for us too. So I actually joined this campaign as a support, as in I was going to give 10 to 20% of my time just to support the team. And now I sometimes wonder whether I work for Comic Relief or I work for Amazon, especially in the next couple of weeks. When we talk about obviously Amazon and the digital innovation kind of goals that you've set, how do partners like Amazon and these big tech giants like us, how can they support those goals? So is there something really that, big tech companies, not just us, anyone that can support those goals? And how do you see us fitting into your innovation strategy?
Yeah, well, I think some of these ideas have been discussed a little bit, but I don't know that we're fully there yet. But I think that for big tech companies to really think about how they could help apply some of their learnings and innovation and technology to charities is really, really interesting, because charities don't get the opportunity to invest in some of those areas or to think about some of those areas as much as we would.
The risk is much lower.
And you're very risk averse. So to be able to benefit that would be great. And that's a different type of corporate partnership than what we normally have, which is about either help us fulfill some of your CSR objectives, or help us engage our staff, or what can we be funding together in these areas. All of those are, of course, important. There are aspects of all of those to our work with Comic Relief. But I think for tech companies in particular, to really think about, this charity could really benefit. They could apply some of our knowledge to their fundraising. They could apply some of our innovation methods to how they can diversify their income. And I think if tech companies can play that role, it could be really revolutionary for the charity sector, helping us kind of innovate in a way and help really fulfill our charitable objectives that we're trying to achieve in the world.
I think, yeah, especially I think, and I don't say that because I work here, but I think like a company like Amazon, I always say to charity partners that approach me, I'm like, we do everything. Pick something, we're probably doing it, or we're probably doing something, whether it's media, it's tech, it's delivery, it's fulfillment, we do everything. So like, think about what you want, come to us, and then let's figure out how to move forward. So, and I think our partnership with Comic Relief really like epitomizes that as well. And then I guess when we look towards the future with Comic Relief, what do you see? I would love to say the next 5 years, but I know how rapidly the space grows. So say in the next 3 to 5 years, where do you see Comic Relief going?
Yeah, well, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about having impact in the world. And we're doing a bit of work right now to sort of clarify what we mean by that. But it feels like today in this world where you're seeing more polarization, you're seeing more misinformation, you're seeing intentional things out in the world that are dividing people, what Comic Relief offers feels more relevant than ever, which is a space you can go to that's about togetherness and joy. And it doesn't matter how you vote or where you come from, it's not about those things. So I think that we've always kind of offered that. We have a brand that is wrapped up in the hearts and minds of the British public. And so I think it's really building upon that and thinking about what this means for the next generation of Comic Relief and also the next generation of audiences that we might engage. And so we have a whole generation who grew up being exposed to charity through Comic Relief in schools. So what are we doing with the next generation about that? And how does that need to evolve and change? So part of it's about relevance, stay relevant in a world that is no longer as comedy driven as it used to be in terms of mainstream entertainment, a world in which there's lots more choice around, what you engage with and so forth.
And also how you engage, like how many people watch TV now rather than have stuff on their phone.
Yeah. So that's a lot of it. And so, we were early to TV for a charity and radio, and now we're thinking about what are the other areas we need to engage. So it's all about meeting people where they are, finding new forms of, entertainment to engage people, because that's our mission. We use the power of humor and popular culture to engage people to care about others. And so we are looking at things like gaming, and we're looking at what we can do on social media, podcasts, just different forms of entertainment and content that can get out there. And that's the premise, is that the issues around us are quite serious, but we don't have to take ourselves so seriously when engaging with them. It's always been about making being charitable fun. And so what are the new forms and new ways of doing that? And that's a lot of what you'll see from us over the next few years.
And is this where, because I was reading about the Power of Pop Fund, is this where it stemmed from?
No, but that is related. So we have some work that we fund called the Power of Pop Fund, and it's about organizations that are using popular culture to drive social change. And that might be around representation and certain issues. And so it felt that was a natural area for us to be funding, given our own mission and what we do. And I think that work moving in the future hopefully becomes more a part of our philosophy and the way we work, and it ties together, those organizations we're funding are organizations we could be collaborating with and really helping some of those organizations get traction when it comes to mainstream entertainment that can drive change.
Amazing. I guess as we head towards now, the end, what would your younger self in the American South think of where you are now?
Who knows? I mean, I definitely did not think I would be, living in London and having two kids, two British kids. That was not.
Do they have British accents?
They have British accents. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely would not have imagined that. So yeah, I think that kid would be quite bewildered by it all. But hopefully also, happy and impressed.
Yeah, amazing. Are your parents proud of you now that you're CEO of the biggest charities in the...
Yeah, I am.
Tell me they are proud now.
I am sure they are. But like I said, I think lots of children of immigrants, share a certain thing where for your parents, it's all about education. It's all about success. It's all about attainment.
Stability.
Yeah, and there will be an element where they're always striving for you, and nothing is ever quite enough, even if they are definitely proud. So yeah, I know they are proud, and I know they also wish that I keep going on to do things. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, good. And when you look back, obviously personally and professionally, is there anything that you think you would do differently?
Yeah, loads. I I know lots of people answer this question sort of no, because I
Yeah.
became the person. But I think, yeah, I would love.
Honestly, I thought you were going to be like, no.
No, I would love to do all kinds of different things. I mean, that's the beauty of life. You know, you
Yeah.
can do anything,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean I'm unhappy where I am. But yeah, I think.
Can you give me one personal, one professional?
Well, I mean, I do think I would be very interested to know what a more creative or artistic life could have been. And I'm also not saying that's ruled out. And there are lots of aspects of that in my job now. But yeah, I think there are things like that. I also, I had children very late in life. And sometimes I think, oh, what would it have been like to have children earlier in life? Especially with this job, it's quite full on having young kids. But at the same time, I love my kids to death, and I wouldn't change that for the world. But yeah, you certainly think there are so many alternative futures you could have had. And considering my life has never been very planned, it's always been a series of meanders and opportunities and strange coincidences. So yeah, I think it's always fun.
I love how you answered that question. Thanks, Samir. Yeah, everyone's like, oh no, I wouldn't. And thank you for being so fantastic. And then lastly, any advice for those that may be listening who may be in the corporate sector, wanting to make the jump into the charity sector? Any advice that you'd give to someone like that?
Yeah, I think my advice would be to do it. I think that everyone who works in the corporate sector should try to have some involvement and experience with charity and social purpose and giving back. I think every human should, And I think that to apply the skills and the knowledge that you learn from one industry to another can be quite powerful, and I think is really needed. And we live in a world where we need a lot of help out there. People need help. Charities need support. And I think, anyone that can apply their skills and knowledge or just time, to help out, I think should definitely consider it, because there's a lot of need out there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Samir. Really, really happy to interview you, especially so close to Red Nose Day. So I'm going to be cheeky and say, please buy your red noses. Red Nose Day is on the Friday, the 21st of March. Amazon is the home of the red noses. So, get your red noses on Amazon.
Excellent plug. Thank you
so much, Samir.
And that brings us to the end of today's truly inspiring conversation. If these insights resonated with you, please don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with others who you might think will find it valuable. It really helps the show. And if you want to know more about Amazon and the Comic Relief Partnership, visit our Amazon storefront at www.amazon.co.uk/comic relief. You can grab yourself a red nose, you can get your hand on some really cool merch, and support the cause that's changing lives across the UK and around the world. Thank you so much for joining me.